do a little prepper here. One of the things that we had this group come to senior management and kind of talk a little bit about what's going on in the market after we started to see some of the financial stuff from last month and really tried to understand it a little bit. And so when we saw this presentation a week or so ago, we thought it'd be really good for the board to see this as well. And so that's the reason why John asked to bring it forward in system management. And so this is the group that's the most knowledgeable about it. So.
Thanks, Tim. Appreciate everyone's time today. My name is Rick Yanovich, and with me is Dan Lenahan. Today we're going to talk about the price trends in the SPP market. And we're going to paint that picture of what was talked about earlier. Natural gas prices, the wind, and the congestion on the system. So the following slides will illustrate that for you today. So factors leading to lower market prices, we talked about declining natural gas. The price of energy is strongly correlated to natural gas. As prices decrease in SPP, as gas prices decrease, energy prices have also decreased. Wind penetration has changed the offer stack. OPPD has added Prairie Breeze. Other wind projects have come in across SPP. We'll show you slides how that is growing. The SPP footprint also affecting prices. And increased congestion on the system. SPP is now part of the footprint, a larger area. And so when everything's happening on the system, that does affect our flow of power. It also affects our prices. We'll show you that also. This is a slide here reflecting SPP's price since the start of the integrated marketplace. The purple line on the bottom is a representative price of Oklahoma Panhandle gas. So since March through February, the price of gas has declined. The red line and gray line are the SPP day-ahead and real-time markets. Those prices have also declined as natural gas has declined. So this just isn't an OPPD phenomenon, it's SPP-wide. The price as a whole on the market is going down in concert with natural gas. So let's look at OPPD's budgeted versus actual gas prices. The red line is OPPD's budgeted gas price, ranging from about $4 to $4.50 MMBTU. The green dashed line is Ventura settled natural gas prices. Those at the start of the integrated marketplace were high. At the beginning of the marketplace, we had the polar vortex, the first few days of the marketplace, which really increased natural gas prices. That's why that spike is there for that first monthly average. As we've gone in the marketplace, as the marketplace has matured, natural gas prices have declined, nearly 40% below our budget. And you see that break point in the future, starting May to the balance of the year, gas is still expected to be below OPPD's budget. And then power prices should follow that same suit. So we're creating the first picture of natural gas prices are way below OPPD's budgeted natural gas prices. This graph's kind of busy, but it's going to bring together some of the points we talked about earlier. First, I want you to focus on the black line. That is the variable cost of Nebraska City 1, excuse me. By the variable cost, we look at the fuel component. We offer our units into the SPP integrated marketplace and the variable cost of the fuel component. That's a coal unit, very stable. The green dash line is a number of a combined cycle unit, taking the heat rate times the price of natural gas to show how our competitive unit works against our coal unit. As we demonstrated before, the SPP integrated marketplace is the purest form of competition. It's our unit versus the other marginal unit in the market. As natural gas prices have declined, our competition has gotten cheaper, thus bringing the price of power down. So the black line is our price to produce. The green line is the competition, getting closer to OPPD's unit. And not expected to change much, maybe a little uptick in the balance of the year. With their production costs, as natural gas will have a seasonal pickup towards the end of this year. The burgundy line is the price of OPPD's energy in the marketplace, where the red dashed line is the budgeted price. You can see towards the end of the year, by November through March of this year, separation when natural gas prices started to really decline, the price of energy declined at OPPD. We used forward natural gas to project our prices going forward for the balance of the year, also below OPPD's budgeted price for the balance of the year.
Just for definition, recall that a combined cycle is a simple cycle or basically a stationary jet engine, right, that burns natural gas as it expands through the power turbine. That's what creates the power. That exhaust gas then goes through a smaller boiler, creates steam, and at the back end you have a steam turbine. So it's a much more efficient process. We don't have a combined cycle in our fleet at OPPD, but that would be a form of generation we would look at in the future as needed. So.
You're thinking of reviving the Cass County project? Is that-
I mean, that's an area we would look at, yes, in the future, when we need it.
What is LMP again?
Locational marginal price,
Okay.
just the price of the OPPD node. So what you take away from here is, if gas prices decline, price of our competition declines, making prices cheaper in the market. So where are we going? That's one of the questions brought up earlier. Where are we going in this process? The view changes as you move on. The blue line, just for a generalization, is our budget from August of 2014. On the left, you see energy. On the right, you see natural gas. Ventex, one of our providers of forecasts, April 2015. The red line is their new view going forward. And as of last week, the green line is where the market is now. So as time changes, the market view varies. I was asked for what I bet. I would bet it'd be somewhere between the green and the blue line going forward. So takeaway here is market expectations change as time goes on. We also talked about it. We're talking about the declining margin. What we took here is the price at OPPD, the locational marginal price, minus the production cost. We have NC1 represented and the combined cycle we talked about. At the start of the marketplace, we're making about $30 a megawatt over our variable cost. As natural gas prices have declined, as power prices have declined, our margins have declined. You see a combined cycle unit, it varies with natural gas prices also. That spike, the negative price in the first month is due to the high production cost for a combined cycle unit. Takeaway here is our margin is declining. We're selling more megawatts, but we're making less per megawatt. So let's bring wind into the equation. This graph represents wind from, on the left side from 2007 all the way through 2015. The 2007 SPP's wind was about 2% of the footprint. As we got out to 2015, the wind represents about 12 to 13% of the footprint. Wind is growing in SPP, putting negative pressure on prices. And why is that? This is a map provided by SPP. The black outline is SPP, with the new outline up on top is WAPA joining in the end of this year, October of this year. The purple represents very good wind. Nebraska is a very high wind state. Lots of wind going into Nebraska and SPP, and that trend will continue. So let's bring together wind, increased wind, and congestion on the footprint. This is a typical map we look at. On the right, it's a 5-minute price contour map of SPP, northern SPP. The purple represents negative pricing. So when you increase wind and there's increased congestion on the system, OPPD is actually paying to generate and sell to the system. The southern part in Kansas there is actually still collecting money. So adding wind, adding without increasing the transmission capability on the system will exacerbate that problem. Now I'll turn over to Dan to talk about congestion.
Can I ask one question about that? If you go back to the last slide of the congestion. When we add the new transmission line, will that help the congestion, and how much will it help it?
That's what Dan's going to do.
Part of what I'm going to talk about, but yes.
Okay.
Nuclear wasn't included in any of your overviews. Were you asked to do that, or how do we compare nuclear along with all the other production?
Sure, nuclear costs, we look at it, we put in the variable cost currently today about $6.70.
670.
Yes, we put in the fuel cost.
That's the
The
fuel.
variable fuel cost. All our units are offered, if you look at this picture on the left, the SPP offer stack, the purple, the negative spot, is the negative price for wind. With production tax credits, you could offer in generation the negative price and still operate the marketplace. That next blue blip is your Fort Calhoun, your nuclear production cost, then in the coal, a combined cycle, and then a simple cycle turbine at about $35 a turn.
I think what you'll see is us coming back to the board in conversation to look at both variable and fixed, those pieces, and sharing at least what that looks like with what we believe the future looks like for system prices, gas prices going forward.
Most of our off-system sales comes from coal, and that's why we focus on coal in that case, just so you can see the main driver for the lower records.
Thanks, Rick. You know, Dan, impacts that transmission congestion has had on market prices and SPP, and what expansion plans are in place to deal with that congestion. What you see on the slide here is two different maps of the SPP footprint with a lot of colors and lines overlaid on top of them. The different colors represent the different average locational prices in the SPP footprint. The two different maps are over two different time periods since the marketplace launched last March. The map on the left is the average prices in SPP for a 12-month period from March of 14 through February of 15. And the map on the right is the average prices in SPP for just this last winter, from December of 14 through February 2015. And the lines on the map represent the high voltage transmission system in SPP, which basically facilitates the market to operate to move power all around the SPP grid. You'll notice on the northern side, there's more of the darker blue colors, green colors. That's more the average lower prices in the SPP footprint during those time frames. On the southern side of the footprint, you'll notice that there's more yellow and orange colors. That's the higher than average prices. So the colors represent the different prices in the footprint. And there's kind of a diagonal ridge line from almost the Kansas City area down to the Texas Panhandle, New Mexico area, where you see the blue and the yellow kind of changing color there. That's indicative of where transmission congestion is occurring on the system. Basically, transmission congestion is when our transmission lines get loaded up to near their limits because the market's trying to move power across the system. So in this specific case, in the north, we have lower cost excess power we're trying to get to the south. And when that happens, it loads up the transmission lines. And the SPP market, how it deals with congestion to control the loadings, is it'll change prices on the generators that are causing congestion, so they'll back off and not overload the transmission system. So basically the lines, the transmission lines along here are what's getting loaded up. So the market will end up sending lower price signals to the generators up north, so they'll back off their output and not cause congestion on the lines. And the generators in the southern part of the footprint will get higher prices, so they'll be incentivized to run more generation because they're getting paid more to run. The takeaway from this slide is basically transmission congestion occurring along this part of the transmission system, and it ends up resulting in lower prices from trying to move our low-cost energy to the southern part of the SPP market. So what's SPP doing about it? These are the same graphics, but on top of it, I overlaid the 5-year SPP high voltage transmission expansion plan. Basically, a lot of the black lines you see here are new high voltage transmission projects that are getting planned to get built in the footprint. And a lot of them are right along this color ridge line where transmission congestion has been occurring on the system. There's a couple projects I want to point out in particular that are going to really impact OPPD's prices the most. And they're located between eastern Nebraska and the Kansas City area. The first project is about a 50-mile, 345 kilovolt line, which was recently energized in northern Kansas City. This has already started to alleviate a lot of the transmission congestion in this part of the system, and we actually saw it. This was energized a couple weeks ago. We actually saw a jump in our market prices go up since that line's been energized. So this has helped alleviate some of the congestion. But the big project, which is really going to alleviate the congestion for our area, is the Midwest Transmission Project line, which is the new 345 kilovolt transmission line from Nebraska City Station down to the east side of Kansas City. This is what's going to free up a lot of capacity on the transmission system for OPPD to move our lower cost energy to the Kansas City and southern parts of the SPP market where the prices are higher.
When will that be complete?
That is planned to be complete by 2017.
And we're accelerating the schedule. Actually, we're planning on getting that done by the end of 2016, if everything works well. So that should help.
Can you talk about the other line that's going through Nebraska?
Yes. Western Nebraska, this has been labeled the R plan. See, there's a lot of dark blue colors in the western part of the footprint. Those are even lower prices than what we're seeing in the eastern part of the state. That's because there's some congestion issues going around near NPPD's Gerald Filling Station. So this line is meant to free up some of that congestion, in addition to support large renewable energy interconnections to this part of the system too. And that's planned to be in service in 2008.
And that was delayed a year, right? Is that what we heard, or?
Yeah, they're talking now about having that done by January of 18. So we would have about a 6 months window that will be delayed.
And they've had the delay there. If you remember, Seth talked a little bit about some of the endangered species. That's
Right.
beetle issue, I believe, that they covered out there that's delaying them.
That's correct, yeah.
The bugs are delaying the new line.
We had some issues with the bats on our transmission line, but it turned out that it worked out. We didn't have to delay it.
This slide right here just shows the load in the SPG footprint over the past 14 months. The blue line represents the peak demand in the footprint over the time period for each month, and the red bars represent the energy consumed in the footprint. The reason I'm showing this is along with the generation, the demand side can drive prices in the SPG footprint as well. So we're trying to look at this to see what kind of trends and loading patterns are been over the past 14 months. Basically, if you kind of look at the first 3 bar graphs and points compared to the last 3 points and bar graphs, that's from winter of 2014 to the winter of 2015. The load levels this year are slightly lower, and that was talked about earlier due to the more moderate temperatures we've been having. So there's less load in the footprint, less ability to sell power into the market. It's not considerably lower, but it does have some impact on how much power is available in the system. I wanted to hit on some items we're following which are going to impact the future prices in SPP. Obviously, gas supply and price is a big one. On the first slide you saw in the presentation, the trend in SPP prices really follows the trend in gas prices. So as gas prices fluctuate in the future, that's going to impact market prices going forward. The EPA Clean Power Plan, which was discussed a little bit earlier, still kind of early on in the stages of that, but what impact is that going to have on fossil fuel supply going forward? It's going to have, force a lot of coal units to back off their output considerably, potentially even retire. More gas units being added, so it's going to potentially change the supply mix in the SPP footprint, which will change prices also. The termination of wind production tax credits. One of the slides you saw from Rick earlier where the state of Nebraska was purple and there were some negative prices in Nebraska. Basically, the wind farms that get these production tax credits can operate at a very low price or even negative price because they're getting subsidized by these production tax credits. At this point, there's been a sunset date for the termination of these production tax credits. So that should potentially mitigate some of the lower prices that the wind farms are getting. However, the federal government can change that policy going forward. We obviously have people following that effort going forward. Later this year, North Dakota and South Dakota are going to basically join SPP. So the SPP footprint's going to span from the Canadian border down to the northern part of Texas. So large utilities in North Dakota and South Dakota are Wappo Basin and Heartland. There's a lot of hydro energy up north, so a lot of hydro energy is going to be entering into the market later this October. And that's going to potentially impact market prices as well. And in addition to that, that's going to change some congestion points in the transmission system too.
Do you think that's going to lower the prices again? Wappo, because there's been less water with Wappo.
Well, it depends on what season they're in. I mean, years ago, when they were in high drought, sold a lot of power to Wappo. And if they're spilling water, they're pushing a lot of power out. So right now, the water is in a good situation, in a good state of water. So I think the lower side, the lower price.
And then finally, I hit on some of the transmission upgrades in SPP that are going on in the next 5 years. And as those evolve over the next 10 years, that will change prices in the footprint as well.
I might want to add here, the challenging piece is that the transmission upgrades, they just take time. Any transmission, even if you're talking about lower voltage, but if you're talking about 345 kV lines, they take 5 to 7 years, maybe even more. So that's
Not an overnight fix.
That's right. So there are plans to help the situation and mitigate all these, but it will be a while.
And how would something like demand side management and energy efficiency affect this?
That would result in this probably mainly lower loads in the footprint, which
Right.
reduce the demand for power in the system as well. Could have an impact on prices as well. This is a summary slide of what Rick and I talked about today. Basically just reminding you of the 3 key points that's kind of drove the trends and lower market prices for the OPPD area. Declining natural gas prices, wind penetration, being offered at the lower prices, and then the transmission congestion. Obviously, we're following all these going forward, but these are the 3 main reasons why our prices have been lower since the launch of the integrated marketplace. And with that concludes our presentation, so if you have any questions.
But it news for us?
This will change. We just don't know how or when.
There are transmission plans in place, especially our NTP line, which things to help us access more of the market in the south.
When you think about it too, you're starting to see discussions on regulations around fracking. So if that continues, then obviously that will impact the price of natural gas. Low oil by itself is going to impact supply a little bit too, because natural gas a lot of times is a byproduct of drilling for oil. And so as you reduce the number of rigs drilling for oil, you also reduce some supply for gas.
That just adds into the need for a diverse fuel supply. Don't put all your eggs in one basket. I mean, have a diverse mix in case
Right.
the natural gas prices change, the coal retires, and put pressure on one commodity. So it's good to have a diverse fuel mix in your portfolio like we do.
So the other thought is that as we increase transmissions, reduce transmission congestion, and to receive some relief from price or some increase in price, the thought is we could see additional wind development, which would then reload the congestion somewhere else. And I mean, if you think of that map of the purple, there is a thought that long-term trend is to have low energy prices in the western part of SPP.
And some of the legislation that has been talked about, and I know Tom's not here, I don't think, this year was the industry with some of the wind developers, our kind of rationale was, we don't have a problem if you build independent wind farms. You just have to have a transmission access to get it out of the market, right? If you're going to sell it, you got to get it out of the market. Otherwise, it puts undue hardship on existing utilities, even our wind resources, it does, and creates other congestion-related issues, and really begin to impact the market. So our position was, we don't have a problem if you do that. You just have to have a pathway and pay for the pathway to get the power out of the market or into the market. And so putting up the wind farm is one thing, but having a transmission access to get it into the market's another. And so that was the conversation that we had with many of the wind developers over the course of the legislative session.
And we should have our lobbyists work on making sure we have some more fracking ones. Definitely.
No, yeah. I think that's all working its way through. Yeah. So.
Dan, right? Any more questions for two gentlemen?